Next, the general format. Okay, now with that introduction, with the specific example of HTTP request, so this will be slightly easier. You see here, first is the request line. And then we get a whole bunch of these header lines, and it ends with what? CRLF. Okay, in fact, at the end of every line, CRLF, CRLF. Okay. And in the request line, we have three components: the method, the argument for the method, and the version. Okay. Some comments might not contain the second component. All right. And you see here, for each header line, we see what? Pair of attribute name and value. So in the slide, we see this is the header field name. So those attributes are sometimes also called the fields, the field names. So attribute value, or field name value. Good. So lots of these. And hey, this is the thing that we did not see in the previous example. Yeah, occasionally you do need to have a body in the HTTP request message. And this is what, if you recall, the post comment. We're sometimes posting content, posting data onto the server. So those data, those information to be communicated from the client and to be registered at the server will be here in the entity body. So real data generated by the user is here. Okay, so officially in general form, the HTTP request comes in three parts: request line, header lines, and body. But for most of the HTTP requests, there are just two parts: the request line and the header lines. Now, let me add a little bit more. First, the post method. You've heard me. There are sometimes web pages that you need to fill forms, okay? Input names, usernames, potential passwords. Okay, those input are uploaded to the server in the entity body. There's another way of doing that recently. Okay, it's called the URL method instead of the post method. What you do there is, hey, you could be clicking just buttons, okay, a certain link, in fact. What the browser does there behind the scene is more like this, okay, requesting to the server, all right, okay, but it's actually sending a phrase like this instead of a file name with the path, okay, so instead of having a path something, and then something.html. So it's a very weird form of HTTP request. Okay, while we know this is more classical, but these days we see this more. Okay, animal search question mark, and then something and something. Okay, so this is actually a query. Unlike request sounds more like requesting for a service, requesting for a file, for an object. But clients often query the server for a service. Okay, for example, look up a database. Exactly. So in a way, the World Wide Web is evolving from a huge hard disk, a global distributed hard disk, to a global distributed database. Okay, so in the HTTP request there, we are actually sending a query. This is the name of the query. And this is the input to the query. So this query obviously contains two arguments in order to execute, for the server to execute. All right. It's using the get method instead of the post method earlier. So this type of a service request is using the get method, but in HTTP request message. And the input is exactly in the URL field in the request line. Okay, and it's this way. Yeah, the query name and then the arguments for the query. All right.